demons comprehend your glory. Neither the devas nor the danavas understand you. O Supreme Person, the Creator of beings, Lord of beings, God of gods, the Lord of the worlds, by yourself you know yourself in your real nature. You know yourself in your real nature by yourself, that is through yourself. You know there's the knowledge and the instrument of knowledge and the object of knowledge, and you are all of them. Because you are non-dual, you are the non-dual reality. And so you are the object of knowledge, you are the knower of that knowledge, and you are the instrument of that through which you know yourself. So since those manifestations through which you exist by pervading these worlds are divine, you should be pleased to speak in full of your own manifestations, your vibhutis. So please tell me of your manifestations. As I explained last time, he's asking Krishna to tell, how is it that I shall know you? How shall I perceive you? I who don't have divine vision, I who don't have the ability to go into samadhi and realize you as you are, how can I know you here? When I'm experiencing this world, how shall I see you? O yogi, how shall I know you? By remaining ever engrossed in meditation. And through what objects, O Lord, are you to be meditated on by me? So 18 goes, O Janardana, Krishna, narrate to me again your own yoga and manifestations, your vibhutis exhaustively, your own yoga, that is your own spiritual power and your manifestations. For while hearing your nectar-like utterance, there is no satiety in me. That is, I am so blessed by hearing everything that you say. It's so uplifting, so inspiring. Dear one, te kathishyami, I will tell you. Te kathishyami, I will tell you. Divyam hyatma vibhutaya. Divyahi atma vibhutaya. I will tell you my own manifestations, my own divine manifestations of my own self, which are divya, which are divine, my own divine manifestations that I will explain to. Pradhanyata. I would tell you pradhanyata, those which are pradhan, those which are the main ones, according to their importance. I will tell you Kuru Shreshta, O best of the Kurus, Arjuna, Nastyanto vistarasya me, because there's no end to the variety of my manifestations, to the extent, the extent of my manifestations. So I can't possibly tell you all of my manifestations. I'll tell you according to their importance, some of the important ones that I will express to you. Then in verse 20 he says, Ahamatma gurakesha sarva bhutashaya sthitah ahamadischa madhyangcha bhutanamanta evacha. So he begins with the most important. He says, according to their importance, I will tell you. So he begins, it's not that all of them that he gives are in a continuing order of diminishing importance, but he does start with the very most important. And the rest are among the important ones. But again, there's not a continuing krama, not a continuing scale. But the most important, I am the self. I am the Atman. I am the self. Gurakesha, O Arjuna, you who have conquered sleep. Gurakesha. Sarva bhuta shayastitaha. I am who am established. Stitaha in the ashaya, in the heart, the home, the repository of sarva bhuta, of all beings. So I am the self established in the heart of all beings. So where do we dwell? We as the person, where do we dwell? Of course, the body dwells in a house and we can give our address, but that's not our real dwelling, because that changes. Sometimes live in one place, sometimes we live in another place. So we sell our house and move someplace else. So as throughout this life, our permanent dwelling place is within the body. Within the body, where is our dwelling place? So that, of course, is said to be the heart. The self is not limited by anything. We exist everywhere. But there is a special place of manifestation, a center, which is our place of special identification. Like the existence of a temple or a church or a synagogue. Why is it that we go to temples or churches? It's because there's a feeling that God resides there in a special way. Well, God exists everywhere. God exists in even the grossest and worst of most disgusting of places. God is there just as well as he is in a temple. But we feel the manifestation more when we go to a temple. And so that's why we go. Otherwise, there's no reason for coming. And there are some traditions who as part of their theology, they say that the temple, church, synagogue, it has nothing special to it. I went once to a conservative synagogue as part of an interreligious program in San Diego. And we went to our interreligious council, which I was one of the founders of. We would go to different houses of worship once a month for a breakfast program. And so once we went to a conservative synagogue, and the rabbi was showing us, part of the program was to show everyone around their place of worship, explain what the place is, what we do here, give a breakfast, which was a typical breakfast that in their tradition might be eaten. And so he took us up to the altar. I don't remember what it's called in the synagogue, but the place of the Holy of Holies. And so he went to great lengths to explain that there's nothing holy here. There's nothing holy here. The Torah, this is just parchment and ink. There's nothing holy to that. It's just parchment and ink. This place is just, it's all material. There's nothing holy here whatsoever. And I thought, my goodness, I understood why he was saying that, the theological position from which he was saying it. But I was thankful that was not the Hindu attitude. Again, the reason why, the good reason why he said that is that their idea is that God alone is holy. And creation is made by God, but and again, Jewish mystics didn't. Within Jewish mysticism, there was a place for a different idea, but among the conservative denomination of Jews, not Orthodox and not liberal, they're in the middle. The conservative Jews, their idea is that nothing but God is holy, and so the Torah, their sacred scripture, what Christians call the Old Testament, there's nothing holy about that. There's nothing holy about the text written on parchment with the ink and everything. Nothing holy about that. Nothing holy about the place. This is just a place. Only God is holy. That, yes, you can understand the theological position behind that, but how much richer it is in a tradition. And again, this is not a criticism of Judaism, just of this one aspect, this one particular idea. How much richer it is to see that, yes, if God is everywhere, and if the universe has come out of God, even if in the Jewish and Christian and Muslim belief that God has created the world, then it must still have the divine touch in it. And of course, in Hinduism, the idea is that it's a very manifestation of God. The whole universe is a misreading of God. And so everything is holy. There's nothing which is unholy. How it just felt so dry and like being out in a desert with no water to drink anywhere and you're dying of thirst. This idea that there's nothing holy here. It's just a place. The Torah is just parchment and ink. Nothing holy there. But this is all that we see. God is still a concept to us. God is still a concept. And if everything that we see, everything that we touch, everything that we do all day, nothing holy to it. It's just stuff. Only God is holy. And God we can't see. God is somewhere where we can't get to him. We can't perceive him. So we're left with just stuff. What a poor attitude that is. How much better to see that, yes, no, I don't see God yet, but I understand that everything has come out of God, and so God is present in everything. Everything is a misreading of God, so everything is holy. There's no difference between sacred and secular. One way of interpreting that is everything is secular. Forget about God. But no, the Hindu idea is that there is no secular because everything is God. There is no secular. There's only the spiritual, only God. So again, Gurakesha Hamatmas Gurakesha. I am the self seated in the hearts of all beings. And so in all beings, we see a special manifestation of God. First of all, when we see a conscious being, we're experiencing even an animal, even a plant which is responsive. We see God in a special way because there's that response there. It's true even of a stone. It's true even of a table made out of dead wood, which once was a living tree, but now dead wood or stone or marble or whatever. God is present there too. But when we see a living being, then we see a special manifestation of God because their consciousness is visible to us. This also is consciousness itself, but we don't see that. We just see it as dull, dead, unresponsive matter. But when we see a living being, there's a responsiveness there, and so we can infer the presence of consciousness. And when we see an animal, we find what to us is a higher manifestation than in a plant. It may not really be higher because we don't know what it's like to be a plant, but it seems higher to us to see an animal. They seem more responsive to us. And when we see a human being, we see what to us is the highest manifestation of consciousness that we see here in this world. And so God is especially manifest in the human being. Two human beings. Swamiji once said, a very provocative statement, who knows whether man is higher or the ant is higher? We don't know because we don't know what it is to be an ant. But from the human standpoint, we see, and we can't help but see, human beings as being higher because being human beings, we understand human beings and we understand their reactions. Well, not all of their reactions sometimes, but basically we understand to some extent human reactions. And so we can see the presence of God even easier within human beings. So yes, we should worship God everywhere, but especially in human beings. Swami Vivekananda always insisted on that. He said, as long as there is even one hungry dog in my country, my religion will be to feed that dog. But he also said that we have to start with human beings. Why? Two reasons why we have to start with human beings and why Sri Krishna begins with the Atman, but especially with human beings. Because one thing is that it's easier to see the manifestation of the divine in a human being because we can understand their conscious responses better. So it's easier to see the presence of consciousness in a human being. The other reason is that human beings are much harder to love than a dog. It's much easier to love a dog than a human being. There's nothing wrong with loving dogs. I love dogs too. I'm a dog person. Cats are okay too. But it's much harder to love a person than a dog. Why? Because when we come home after a day of work, the dog is always happy to see us. And when we come home from work, sometimes the people at home, husband or wife or children, then we're the last person they want to see. And we want a little comfort, and they just want to do their own thing and want us to get out of their face or whatever. We try to be kind to somebody, and they insult us. And so human beings are much harder to love than a dog. And so therefore we should try hard to love people. If Swamiji had said, as long as there's one hungry dog in my country, my religion will be to feed that dog, but not people, because who cares for people? Then everybody would have, well, at least people who love dogs, everybody would have said, oh yes, that's a religion I can get behind. I hate people too. But no, we have to learn to love people. We have to learn to love everyone. Yes, we'll find some people annoying, we'll find some people bothersome and stuff, but we have to have a general love for everyone, because it's easier to see God in a human being, and it's also the only way we can get over our prejudices and our animosity and our selfishness, etc., by learning to love people. And so I am the self residing in the hearts of all beings. He starts with that. And then ahamadischa madhyam cha bhutanamanta eva cha. Ahamadi, I am the beginning. I am the beginning. I am the madhya. I am the middle. And I am the anta, the end of all sarva bhutanam, of all beings, of bhutanam. Ahamadi, madhya, and anta. I am the beginning, the middle, and the end of all beings. So the beginning, everything has come out of God. God is there before we ever open our eyes. God is there before we wake up. God is there when we're in deep sleep. God is there. If we were to go back to our first, there is no such thing as a first incarnation. It's said in Vedanta that the chain of incarnation is beginningless. It comes to an end with liberation, but it's endless. Understanding that is a difficult matter. There's a philosophical reason for that. I won't go into that now because that would take a long time to explain it sufficiently. But the Hindu idea is that incarnation, the process of reincarnation, there's no beginning to it, but it ends with liberation. But wherever we go, we find that God is already there. God is already there. When we were born into this world, God was already there. When we were born into the last birth, God was already there. God is the beginningless reality. That before everything, God is. So not that God was before everything, before everything, God is. Because God never was. God is the eternal now. Was is only a concept. There's no such thing as was. There's no such thing as past. That's only a concept that we imagine because of our perception of change. But God always is, and before everything. He's the middle. That is, the middle is where? The middle is right now. We're in the middle. And so God is the middle of all beings. That is, God is the present of all beings. God is here and now, the foundation of everything, the inner reality of everything. Everything that is God, because God alone is. God alone is Sat. God is existence. Sat is that which is. Asti, from sad dhatu, the root, verbal root to be, is sad, and from that comes the noun sat, the abstract noun sat, being. And so God is that which is. And so anything that is, the quality of isness, the quality of its existence, is the very experience of God. If I could understand properly, the very fact that I see that you are, I say that you are here. But if I say you are here, that means even more important than here is are. You are here. Here is just something that happens to be where you are right now. But the main thing is you are. That fact that you are, that is the manifestation, that is divinity itself. The sense that I am, that is divinity itself. The sense that you are, that's divinity itself. The sense that this table is divinity itself. And so God is the middle of everything. That is the present, the reality of everything. So God is the beginning, because before everything here came to be, before the universe came into being, God is. God is now. And anta eva cha. And I'm also the end of everything. The end of everything. When everything disappears, I am. I am before anything came to be. I am when the universe exists. I am when everything has come to an end. So Sri Krishna is saying that I am the Adi, I am the Madhya, I am the Anta. I am the beginning, the middle, and the end. Again, he said that that he would begin with the most important, and so he's begun with that. I am the self seated in the hearts of all beings, and I am the beginning, the middle, and the end of everything, of every particular thing, and of the whole universe itself. And then 21, he says, Adityanamaham Vishnur Jyotisham Raviram Shuman Marichir Marutam Asmi Nakshatranamaham Shashi. So here he begins with particulars, that is, more particular vibhutis, more particular divine manifestations. And most of the rest of the chapter will be until at the end when he says, there's no end to my manifestation, so what is the use of going on naming more? But until then, he'll go on naming manifestations. There's no end to his manifestations, as he says at the end of the chapter. Why? Because everything is a manifestation of God. A grain of sand is a manifestation of God. A moment of time is a manifestation of God. A piece of dirt is a manifestation of God. Everything is a manifestation of God, and so there's no end to the manifestations. But what he's doing here is giving, again, important manifestations. Important meaning what? Important to God? No, important to the human mind, because we see things in a hierarchical arrangement. We can't help that. Nowadays, in the West in particular, that idea of getting beyond hierarchy is considered very important. And there's a good social reason for that, not being hierarchical. But the human mind cannot but understand things in terms of hierarchy. Yes, getting rid of social hierarchy where some people are better than others just because of their position. Yeah, getting rid of those ideas is a good thing. But the human mind understands in terms of classification, and classification includes hierarchical classification. So Sri Krishna is talking first about the things where he is especially manifest in the best of a class. So he says, Adityanamaham Vishnu. Among the Adityas, I am Vishnu. So again, remember that the Gita, being part of the Mahabharata, came towards the end of the Vedic age. That Vedic age actually ended with the time of Buddha, about 500 BC. And the Gita was, according to tradition, was written about 3500 BC. So 3,000 years before the Buddha. That we can't prove at present. And so many modern scholars, they say that no, the Gita was written after the time of Buddha. But there's no reason to believe that. The Mahabharata itself is telling about times long before the Buddha. So the Mahabharata might not have been written down in its present form until much, much later historically. But it tells a story which had been passed down by generations since ancient times. So there is good internal evidence for believing that, or for saying that there's no reason at present not to believe that it could have been 3,500 years ago that the story of the Gita came down from that time. That sounds, to the modern mind, especially the modern scientific mind, that sounds impossible, because 3,500 BC, if the Mahabharata might not have been written down until 3,000, 4,000 years later, then who is going to keep all of these stories straight from that time? But no, there's evidence of that sort of thing. The very fact that all over the world, there's, the story of the flood, including in the Hindu scriptures, the story of the flood. You find it everywhere in the world. And now they've found scientific evidence for the reason for that. Not proof that the two are correlated, but it seems to be very strong evidence that that's what people were talking about. And that was from 12,800 years ago. 12,800 years ago, the story of this event when huge fragments of a comet crashed into the ice shelf in North America. And all the way, fragments went all the way to Syria. Most of it landed in North America, where much of North America, at least down to Michigan, below the Great Lakes, was covered by a huge glacier. It was 2 miles thick. Ice 2 miles thick, covered in the last ice age, and it was never understood, exactly how the ice melted and the warming began. But now there's clear scientific evidence, and this has only happened in the last 15 years, and it keeps increasing the amount of scientific evidence that there was a massive comet which broke up in the Earth's atmosphere and still fell in huge pieces. And it crashed into the Earth at 10,000 miles an hour. 10,000 miles an hour. Some fragments like 1 kilometer wide crashed into the Earth at 10,000 miles an hour into this ice cap, and almost instantaneously it melted the ice cap. And so almost overnight, it wasn't literally overnight, but it was almost overnight, the seas rose 400 feet above their level at that time. 400 feet the seas rose. Imagine if the seas rose 400 feet right now. Houston and most of the big cities in America would be gone. They'd be wiped out. And so that knowledge was passed down for 12,000 years. Or even more. Now that we would know is 12,000 years ago, 12,800 years ago. And in North America, where this was the most devastating, it wiped out, in that one moment, all of the megafauna in the North America were wiped out. The mastodons, the other large mammals, they were all brought to extinction. Human civilization, the Clovis people, they were brought to extinction. So it was a cataclysmic event, and the Native Americans, some of the tribes, they have a memory from that time that they've passed down to the present of fireballs coming out of the sky and raining fire on everything, burning everything, destroying everything, killing all of the animals, and then a huge flood coming after that. They have a detailed memory of that which happened 12,800 years ago, and they didn't have writing. So all of this was passed down for the last almost 13,000 years. Not 1,000, not 1,300, 13,000 years. And so the fact that the Mahabharata, that the story of the Mahabharata war and things could have been passed down for several thousand years before it was written down, there's nothing strange to think about that, especially with the tremendous cultivation of memory that the ancient people of India had. Around the world, people cultivated memory, but there was nothing like the memory that was cultivated in India. And so again, Sri Krishna is talking about a time when the Vedic age had not yet ended, but it was the beginning of the end of the Vedic age, which came to a final end, again, with the coming of the Buddha. But by this time, as I explained in the last class, Sri Krishna was beginning to teach the fundamentals of the classical Hinduism, which was growing up from the time of the Mahabharata. So he says here, Adityanam aham Vishnu. Among the Adityas, I am Vishnu. So remember, at that time, Vishnu was not yet, in the Vedic time, was not yet Ishvara. So this was a time when Vishnu was beginning to become, Vishnu and Shiva were beginning to become the great gods. But it was a time when people still understood Vishnu to be one of the Adityas, that is, one of the many Vedic gods, and not a very important Vedic god at that. Shiva was one of the Rudras, and not a very important god. And so while reading these passages here, we have to remember the time in which this was written. So among the Adityas, I am Vishnu. There were 12 Adityas. And those 12, just for interest's sake, you'll recognize some of the names, were Dhata, Mitra, you all recognize, Aryama, Rudra, Varuna, Surya, Bhaga, Vivashwan, Pusha, Sovita, Tvashta, and Vishnu. So Vishnu was one of the 12 Adityas. So among the 12 Adityas, I am Vishnu, as Sri Krishna is saying. So even at the Vedic time, Vishnu was not even perhaps the most important of them. But with the coming of Sri Krishna, or the coming of Ram even before Krishna, and then Sri Krishna, Vishnu is beginning to rise in importance because Rama and Krishna both were seen as incarnations of Vishnu. And so Adityanam Aham Vishnu Jyotisham Raviram Amshuman. Among the luminaries, here he's not talking about classification of deities, he's talking about luminaries. Among the things that give light, I am Amshuman Ravi. I am the sun who is the embodiment of rays, the luminous sun. Among the luminaries, I'm not a matchstick, I'm not a candle, I'm not a glowworm. I'd heard of glowworms all my life. I never saw one until I went to India. I'd grown up with lightning bugs in South Carolina and Georgia, but I'd never seen a glowworm. So Sri Krishna, I'm not a glowworm. I'm not a lightning bug. I'm not a candle. I'm not a star. I am the sun itself, the sun which illuminates the whole world. Marichir Marutam. And among the Maruts, another classification in the Vedic pantheon, I am Marichi. So there are 7 groups of Maruts and 7 groups of 7. Each group of Maruts had 7 with their members, and there were 7 groups, so there were 49 Maruts. And so Marichi is the most important of the 49 Maruts. So I am the Marichi. Nakshatra Maham Shashi. Among the stars, I am the moon. Let me say, Sri Krishna missed the lesson in school about astronomy, and thought that the moon was a star. Well, no, he means by nakshatra he wasn't giving a astronomical scientific classification of what makes up a star, what makes up a planet, what makes up a moon. As you all know, Pluto was demoted. Pluto, we all grew up knowing Pluto to be a planet, and now Pluto is no more a planet. That doesn't fit the definition. Though there is, among scientists, there are those scientists which are pushing to put Pluto back among the planets. And so we still have to wait to see whether the consensus will be that, okay, well, let's give him a break and let Pluto back into the club of planets. But here he's talking about stars. The sun is something different that you see in the daytime. So yes, the sun is a star, we know that, but we're talking about human experience. And Sri Krishna is not giving an astronomy lesson. Now learn what a planet is, Arjuna, and then learn what a moon is that goes around a planet, and then learn what asteroids are, and then they're comets, and then they're stars, and then they're big stars and little stars, they're red dwarfs. And no, he's not giving an astronomy lesson. He's talking in terms of human experience. And so in the daytime, the great luminary is the sun, but then the sun disappears. And then there's the moon and all of the stars. So among the luminaries at night, those are the nakshatras. And so among them, I am the moon. Because the stars, they're little tiny, even the biggest star that we see in the sky is very tiny. And if the moon is not there, that star is not enough to give light for us to do things by. We can see its light, but you can't read a book in the starlight. But in moonlight, you can, if it's a full moon, you can read a book in the moonlight. And so among the nighttime luminaries, the nakshatras, I am the Shashi. And so, what does this mean? I'm Vishnu among the Adityas. I'm Marichi among the Maruts. I am the radiant sun among all of the luminaries. I am the moon among the nighttime luminaries. What does that mean? He's talking in terms of, among these things, I am the best in its class. I am the best of everything in its class. Does that ring any bell from Sri Ramakrishna? His teachings. Sri Ramakrishna said, wherever you see greatness in a human being, know that there's a special manifestation of the Divine Mother's power. So when he would go to pay his respects to a great musician, if he heard for a long time about Ishwara Chandra Vidyasagar, the great educator and philanthropist, so he wanted to go see him to pay his respects. Whenever he heard about any great person, he wanted to go and pay his respects. Why? Because he said, wherever you see greatness, there you find a special manifestation of the Divine Mother. And so that's what Sri Krishna is saying, that wherever you see greatness, that will remind you of me, because there's a special manifestation of me there. Yes, I'm in the faintest star, or I'm in the star that you can't even see with the naked eye. I'm there too, but I'm especially manifest in the best of everything in its class. Because there, when you see the best in its class, then you feel something special. If you I grew up near the Appalachian Mountains, in the foothills of the Appalachians, and so family would go on outings to up into the mountains sometimes for a nice, beautiful drive through the mountains. And the Appalachian Mountains, the Blue Ridge Mountains, the Smoky Mountains in the southeast, they're very, very pretty, very beautiful, very scenic. But as far as mountains go, they're small mountains. They used to be higher than the Himalayas. But because they're much, much older than the Himalayas, they've worn down to very small mountains now. The highest of the Appalachian Mountains in North Carolina is only a little over 7,000 feet. So Mayavati is in the foothills of the Himalayas, and it was 6,400 feet. And you go to the top of the mountain that Mayavati is on, and that's 7,000 feet there. And that's just a foothill. It's not even considered much of a mountain. The mountains, you look up at the mountains like that. So the Appalachians are beautiful. And if you're in the Appalachians and you go and see the biggest of the Appalachians, you feel inspired because you see this vast, big mountain. But then you go to the Rockies and see the Rockies and you say, oh my goodness, the Appalachians, they were just hills compared to the Rockies. The Rockies are so beautiful and magnificent. And then you go to the Andes and see mountains that are 20,000, 22,000 feet high. Gigantic mountains, magnificent. And then you go to the Himalayas, and then there's nothing else on earth like the Himalayas. And so when you see that, then you're inspired. The sages went to the Himalayas for ages to meditate. Why? Because in the presence of that majesty, the mind becomes naturally quiet. When you go to the ocean and you look out at the ocean, the mind naturally becomes quiet. You see the little water collection pond we have in the front, and you think, oh, a little pond of water. You go and you see a bigger pond, and you think, oh, that's nice. And you go to the neighborhood where some of you live, where you have lakes with fountains and things. And oh, now we're getting to real bodies of water. That's pretty. But then you go to the ocean, and then you see, oh my God, there's nothing like that. Nothing like that. You feel the inspiration, the mind becomes quiet and everything. So wherever you see greatness, there the mind feels uplifted. So, and then in verse 22, he goes on, Vedanam samavedosmi devanam asmi vasavaha indriyanam manaschasmi bhutanam asmi chetana. So among the Vedas, Vedanam samavedosmi. Among the Vedas, I am the Samaveda. Why not the Rig Veda? Well, it could have been the Rig Veda. That, of course, he is that also. And he could have chosen the Rig Veda because it was the first of the Vedas and the most important of the Vedas, the one that was the source book for the other Vedas. All of the other three Vedas take much of the material from the Rig Veda. But the Samaveda, why? Because the Samaveda was the metrical Veda. All of the Vedas are chanted, and the beautiful chanting for each one, a different style of chanting for each one. But the Samaveda was the sung Veda. And so I'm the Samaveda, the musical Veda. And the Samaveda was the source of Hindu music, the Indian musical tradition. The North Indian classical music, that was a mixture of native Indian Hindu music and Middle Eastern music when the Muslims came into India. It was a beautiful blending of the two traditions of music. But South Indian music is still largely based on the Samavedic tradition. And so the Samaveda was the metrical Veda, the Veda which was sung, and the origin of Indian music. And so therefore, among the Vedas, I am the Samaveda. Devanam asmi Vasavaha. Vasavaha indicates Indra. So among the gods, among the Devas, I am Indra. So again, remember, in the Vedic period, Indra was the king of the gods. Later in the Puranas, Indra is still called the king of the gods, but now it means king of the minor gods, the little gods. Those who have offices over little, they're like bureaucrats. The chief bureaucrat is Indra. Whereas Shiva and Vishnu and Devi, they are the CEO. They are the Lord of the universe. But at this time, Indra was still had a place of importance. Again, this was, as I've said many times today in last class, this was a time of transition where Indra was beginning to be demoted, but he wasn't yet demoted. But there was the beginning of this, the rise of Vishnu and Shiva. So among the gods, I am Indra because Indra is the king of the gods. And so there I'm specially manifests. Indriyanam manaschasmi. Among the sense organs, I am the mind. So usually we think of the sense organs as the seeing, hearing, smelling, touch, and taste, the five sense organs, and then the five organs of action. In the Western thought, they didn't talk about the organs of action, the five organs of action, but in the Hindu tradition, the organs of action were analyzed also. So five organs of action, five organs of knowledge, Jnanendriyas and Karmendriyas, organs of knowledge and organs of action. And so among the organs, I am the mind. Well, the mind isn't seeing, the mind isn't hearing, the mind isn't tasting, touching, smelling. So where does the mind come in? Well, sometimes in Hindu thought and in Buddhist thought, the mind was the 11th sense organ. Why? Because the manas, the different parts of the mind is one, but it has different functions. And so one function of the mind as the manas, that which is called the manas, is to coordinate the sense information. I see you, and if you speak to me, I hear you. Now, hearing, I hear here. Seeing, I see here. Seeing is a picture. Hearing is a sound. And then if I reach out and shake your hand or I pat you on the shoulder or something, I'm touching you. Those are three very different ways of knowing. Touch is not seeing. Seeing is not hearing. Hearing is not touching. So these are three very different ways of touching. And then, of course, there's taste and smell as well. So how is it that I know that when I hear you speak and I see you and I touch you, that those are all put together in a harmonious picture? How is it that these three distinct ways of knowing, which have no connection to each other, seeing, hearing, and touching, very distinct experiences, what is it that puts that into a harmonious picture so that I know that I'm dealing with the same world in these three different ways, and then add smelling and taste? It's the mind that does that, the manas, that aspect of the mind. It's that which coordinates all of our sense activity. And so therefore the mind was sometimes considered a sense organ because it's that which, without which none of the senses can function. If the eyes are there and you were able to keep the eye vital by keeping it in a particular solution, but you've cut it off from the mind. You've blocked it from the mind. Then there'll be no seeing. The eye is there; it's being kept vital, and so everything is there for seeing, but there's no seeing because the mind is gone. And so without the mind, there is no sense function. And so the mind is, again, for that reason sometimes. So among the senses, I am the mind, because I am that which control all of perception. So then it comes to Bhutanam asmi Chetana. And among living beings, Sarva Bhuta, all living beings, I am Chetana. That is, I am intelligence. I am understanding. Even an amoeba, even a protozoan, has that. You give us a stimulus which they can understand. If you say through the microscope, you look at an amoeba and say hi, the amoeba doesn't wave at you with one of its it extends part of its cell wall and waves at you like that. No, it doesn't. It doesn't respond that way. But if you can give a stimulus that it recognizes, like touch with a probe or something, or you put something in the solution that is living in, then it responds to it because it recognizes something's happening. I've got to act. And so you find the manifestation of intelligence. I remember as a kid, one of the fascinating things one of those things that fascinated me when I first started studying biology was that you take a flatworm, which you can find in like ponds like this and everything. If I find a flatworm, if you teach it a trick, and a flatworm is a very primitive form of life, but you can teach it simple tricks like how to find its way to food, find its way. That's the best way to train anybody or anything, is to to train them towards food. So you can try teach the flatworm. You put another flatworm into the same that hasn't been taught that, and then you have to teach it. But if you take the flatworm that's been taught and you grind it up, it sounds pretty gross, so you grind it up and feed it to the flatworm which has never learned that, and you put it in the dish, it knows exactly how to get to the food. That somehow there was a transfer of knowledge just by grinding up the material of the trained flatworm and feeding it to a non-trained flatworm, and suddenly the non-trained flatworm knows how to find its way. And so every being, plants, animals, even down to protozoa and single-cell life and bacteria, they all have Chetana, they all have intelligence. And so in all beings, Sarva Bhuta is among all the beings, I am intelligence itself. So we'll have to stop here. Time is up. And this will be the last class until I return from India. So that will be the beginning of April. We'll have the next Gita class. So before I give the closing, because I want to get this on the recording for people who watch online also, that I'm going to India this Sunday, March 1st. I'll be back on the 31st. And in between times, there will be Tuesday night and Thursday morning classes, but the Tuesday night class will not be on the Gita. Swami Brahmarupananda will speak from a section of the Taittiriya Upanishad, and Swami Atmarupananda will just have one Tuesday class, and he'll have a question-answer session. Because I thought with the Gita, I've gone all the way through from the beginning and going through in a certain way, and so I want to continue with the Gita rather than breaking that. But they both will give the Thursday class on the Gospel. So the reading of the Gospel will continue, but the Gita, there'll be a 1-month break until the beginning of April. So now I'll give the closing chant. Om Purnamadav Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadhaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti 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 Harihi Om Tat Sat. That infinite being is full, perfect, and complete. This relative universe is full, perfect, and complete. From out of the fullness of that infinite being, the fullness of this universe has come. And yet that being remains ever the same. Om, peace, peace, peace be unto us and to all the beings of the universe. So when I give that translation of the whatever prayer of peace, peace, peace,